Three things that will forever change the way that you look at type 1 diabetes. I had the unique opportunity to interview Craig S. and go through his methods for completing an hour long of a mystery exercise that will shock you as he kept his blood sugars between 75 and 80 milligrams per deciliter through the entire activity. Now, he uses our 80/20 blood sugar formula, but in my opinion, he has far surpassed my abilities and has improved upon it. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about exercise and blood sugars through that stability. He's going to share his A1C and how he dropped it in a month, and of course, how he has increased certainty and control alongside freedom with his blood sugars as a parent as well. So I cannot wait to share this episode with you. It is chock full of golden nuggets as he dives deep into the details of how he's able to manage his blood sugars so well. We're going to get into our theme song and then jump straight into it. So buckle up and enjoy.
I've spent the last 10 years pushing the limits while identifying trends and patterns in my type 1 diabetes management. Follow along as I learn, apply, and share the fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle strategies that I've learned from diabetes experts around the world. The real question is, how can we live fearlessly with diabetes while maintaining stable blood sugars? This podcast is here to give you the answer. My name is Matt Vandervecht, head coach and co-founder of FTF Warrior, and welcome to Pardon My Pancreas.
Well, Craig, I am super excited to jump into this, especially after hearing about the recent win. Super pumped to show you off a little bit because it was impressive, to be honest, better than I've been able to do. But before we jump into your win, I'd love to give everybody watching kind of some backstory. Maybe give us a little bit about how long you had type 1 and maybe MDI versus pump, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, so I've had diabetes for almost 17 years. Started off as a type 2, but was been insulin dependent probably for the last 8 years. MDI for the last 8 years, but I was on about like 5 medications and was not under control where I needed to be. My A1C was above 7, and I mean I was on Jardiance, Trulicity, Metformin, fast-acting, short-acting insulin. I was on all of that and still wasn't getting the results. And finally, I was like, it's time for me to see a new endocrinologist. So saw a new endocrinologist. As soon as she looked at my numbers, she was like, because I've been on the Dexcom for almost 2.5 years. She was like, your numbers look like a type 1 diabetic. She was like, let's test you and just see if you're even still making insulin. And sure enough, we did the test and back in October of last year. And she was like, the amount of insulin that you're making puts you in the category of really a type 1 diabetic. You're not making hardly any insulin. Whatever that range is, I was below it. So at that point, it kind of made sense. I was like, let's go for a pump. I'm tired of fighting this. And I want better control. And so stripped off all 5 medications that I was on. And in December, I went on the Omnipod. And so I've been on the Omnipod since December of last year. And started off coming into this program, my A1C was a 7.1. Maybe about 3 or 4 weeks in, my A1C was starting to trend down already to a 6.9. I just looked recently, my 90 days at a 6.9, my 14-day as of this week when I looked is at a 6.8. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wow. And I love mentioning this too. Like the A1C, we all know it's a 3-month thing, right? And then in less than a month, you've already impacted that, which shows how radical these changes are that you're making, right? That's so incredible. And thank God there are some good endos out there. I know a lot of us have bad experiences, but thankfully this one was like, I think you're a type 1.
Yeah. Well, and for the sake of my other endo, she was okay. She was good. And it was actually her mentor that she referred me to, but she just wanted me to put me on a pump. Like she wanted to put me on a pump 2 years ago. And I was like, I'm a type 2 diabetic. My insurance is never going to pay for that. Help me understand why. And I always felt like I have to understand something. You're going to put me on a pump. I need to understand, why am I going on a pump?
Mhm.
Why is it, as a type 2 diabetic, I can't get this, seem to be able to get this under control? And I'm under all these medications. So I kind of resisted going on a pump because, like, I need to understand it before I just go on it. And so I pushed back. I was like, I'm not ready for that. But once I knew that, it's like, I'm not making any more insulin, I was like, I'm tired of working this hard. Let's get a pump on there and take off some of the, because I was doing everything that I knew how to, that seemed to be right. I mean, I've always exercised, I've always paid attention to what I ate, but then, so it was frustrating. I was always in a constant state of frustration because I felt like I was doing all the right things, but just wasn't getting the results. So
Right. Well, and
yeah.
kind of on that topic too, obviously you're in the program right now, like you're currently going through it, but what were you struggling with mainly before you got into the program?
Mealtime highs. I mean, I would eat. I mean, those were my spikes.
Mhm.
It all centered around my meals. Usually, I would eat and I would go high, and I've been doing corrections and kind of doing equations in my mind pretty much ever since I've been, on insulin. My endo was like, look, you're a numbers guy. You should be able to get this. Here you go. Here's kind of your correction factor. And so I've been doing that aspect of it for years, kind of calculating it. Um, but it's just it wasn't fine tuned.
Mhm.
And I think that's really was the difference. Is like my basal, I don't think has ever been right. My correction factors, nor my, insulin for meals, hasn't, quite been fine tuned. And so I think the program is helping me to be able to fine tune all of these different elements that I've been dealing with for years, but just not looking at in the right perspective. For example, pre-bolusing. My endo always discouraged me to pre-bolus. She's like, oh, you might forget to do it, or you might
Really?
forget, and I don't want you going low. And so I never really pre-bolus. And I was kind of scared of it even when I got into this program. Lo and behold, like I just said in the earlier call, I have a long pre-bolus. And so no wonder I go high. I was going high and spiking with every meal because I wasn't pre-bolusing. Matter of fact, sometimes I wouldn't even I wouldn't even take my insulin until halfway through the meal or even after I got done. So I
Right.
think learning, it's just like, it's little things that I'm just like, I've heard of that, but my endo never took the time to go into why is this important or not important to allow me to be able to make. I feel like I have more information that I can make the decisions on my own. Like, okay, no, this is something I need to do.
Hmm. I love that. Well, I love that you brought up you said my pre-bolus, right? And it's, if you're comfortable with it, sharing how long you typically have to wait that you've discovered.
So I started off like, okay, I'll do the little math. And it was like, but I found out that I started off with 15. That didn't seem to, I was still spiking. I went kind of to 20. And now I'm realizing I'm a lot of times, unless depending on, a lot of it depends on what my blood sugars are currently doing. But if I
Mhm.
don't have arrows going down, like I'm starting to trend down, I need at least 30 minutes. And with my lifestyle, I'm usually not eating until it's like, man, I'm famished. It's time it's time to eat. And so it takes a lot of discipline for me. Which is funny because when we were on the phone earlier, I was sitting in a Chick-fil-A parking lot and it was helping me do my pre-bolus because I was like, okay, I have my food, but I need to wait 30 minutes. So I was like, I'm gonna sit here, do a little bit of this call, then I'm gonna get on the highway and I'm gonna drive for about 20 minutes. And then by then I can probably start eating and I should be fine. So,
Wow.
but it's pretty long. I don't like
Yeah.
it. It's the one thing that I hate. I was like, this really stinks.
That is a huge bummer with type 1, honestly, the pre-bolus. But actually, I love that you brought that up just as a distinction for anybody who is watching this and might not know. 30 minutes, we're all initially taught 10 to 15. Of course, that's not everybody. You were told not to pre-bolus, right? But the average advice is 10 to 15. And you're discovering now that doesn't even put a dent in it, right? It's like,
Mm-mm.
nope, 30 minutes, that's my base. And I'm 20 minutes. I'm above it as well. And so I just think it really drills the point home that we all need this thing to be customized to our needs because we have different levels of insulin resistance or stress or food preferences and all that kind of stuff. Uh,
Right.
but as you were getting this thing kind of dialed in, what has stood out to you as, I know you mentioned pre-bolus, the basal, the activity. What stood out as like, oh, this is actually working now? What was the big aha moment for you?
I think for me was the the aha moment was when I began to figure out what my GTR was,
Mm,
because that within itself, and I'm still quite haven't gotten the equation right in my mind that I can kind of back into, like what does that look like on the insulin side. But it's been that to me was a big aha, because I think it saved me while I was with my kids at Disney walking around the park all day, because I was able to say, okay, my blood sugar is 100. I'm going to be walking around for about 10 more hours. um, and we got 3 more hours until we're probably going to stop and have dinner, or we're going to be waiting in this line for 3 hours. I need to eat something. And I was like, I can eat 19 carbs and know that it's only going to take me, I'm going to end up at about 170 after it's all said and done. So I was like, I'm okay with that because I'm going to be walking around. So that to me was the big aha, was really learning my GTR so that I can see, okay, so a lot of times I will eat a certain amount of carbs because I know how it's going to impact me. I know where it's going to take me to, and I don't have to bolus for it because I know that I'll be okay at that level based upon the activity that I'm doing. Um, and so, ooh, I'm going a little high.
at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A is catching up to me a little bit.
Oh, I love
So,
it. No, but I think that's a great piece of the puzzle. Right? A lot of people, well, most people don't even know what a GTR is because it's just something that we teach. But inside of that, I think the epiphany is that we can manipulate blood sugars intentionally, right? Where it's like, I want this blood sugar, like you said, 170. So this is how I'm getting there. It's not a guessing
yeah.
game anymore. I love that. Uh, and actually, on that topic, I know we initially wanted to have this chat because of some impressive predicting and calculations you had made on a recent exercise bout. Uh, can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, definitely. So I do a pretty high intensity um, fight club boxing class, usually like once a week on Tuesdays. And in the beginning, I had a really hard time with this class because it was the first time in a long time. I don't normally experience, even with my HIIT classes, rarely do I have problems with going low. And I do HIIT training all the time. But this boxing class, like I went in there the very first time and it, my blood sugar dropped like a rocket. Like this is like, and I've never experienced anything quite like that. Like I had to stop, I had to eat some snacks, I had to drink some juice, and I had to like do all kinds of stuff. This was before I even knew my GTR. I was just like, I gotta treat this, I gotta treat this, I gotta treat this. Um, and but then it kind of became a challenge for me to say, okay, how can I do this and not let it beat me and I beat it? It's like I kind of like took out like I'm gonna fight club against this against this class because it's like I love it. I mean, I burned, six, 700, 800 calories like in the class. So it's like it's good, but I was like, I got to figure out how to do it and not go low. And so that became my challenge each time I took the class. It's like, okay, what do I got to do differently? And so then I started, eating a little bit more before the class or kind of timing it. But this last class that we're kind of talking about that I went to just this last week, I was leaving the office on my way home. And I was like, oh, I hadn't eaten since lunch, and so this was like in the evening. I was like, this is not going to work. I'm like, I'm going to get home and I'm not going to be able to make it through this class. Like, I knew I was headed down. I was like, maybe I don't know, at that time, maybe 100 or something like that. And I was like, I got to do something. And then I got home and I was like, oh, shoot, I'm going low. And so, like, my blood sugar started going down. Like, I was getting alerts that it was going down. It was like, you know, 60 and it was on its way down. So I was like, okay, let me let me see what I can do to see if I can get my carbs up enough to be able to take the class. And I think I sent you like a printout of like, I think I ate like probably 54 carbs before going into this class because I knew that I was on my way down. I was like, I needed to get it stabilized, but I also knew just from past experience, I drop easily 60 or more points every time I take this class. It's and I think it's an unusual, what do you guys call it, a IAR? Because I don't think it's from my testing that I'm doing right now, my IAR, it's not quite that high. So I just think this particular class, the intensity of it, the fact that it's an hour, and I'm probably staying at my max,
Mm,
heart rate pretty much the entire hour. It's pretty intense. So I think that's why it drops me so quickly.
yeah.
So I realized that I was going to drop significantly, like 60 points. So I was like, okay, if I need to drop 60 points, um, and I'm already like going down, I'm like at 65. I just started like kind of calculating and I was like, okay. And I kind of just like backed into it. I was like, I want to make sure that I actually thought I would end up higher, but I was like, I want to make sure that I'm like, maybe finish around 110 or something like that. And so that's kind of how I decided to eat as many carbs as I did before going into the class. I didn't even know if it was going to work because I like didn't have enough time to even digest and get in my system. When I got to the gym, I think I was finally like 75
Mhm.
and steady. I wasn't nervous. I since I've had my Dexcom, I haven't experienced like I've had lows, but not too. There's only been a few times where it's like lows where I'm like feeling all the symptoms. I feel like I'm going to pass out or whatever. That I feel like it lets me know in enough time that I'm able to adjust. So I wasn't afraid, but I was like 70. Like I didn't even think about the fact like what we were talking about earlier. Like, did I eat all these carbs and am I going to be able to even get them in my system
Mhm.
fast enough for it to even impact the class? So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up. I was like, okay, so I ate about 54 carbs. By the time I got to the class, I was steady at like 75, 72, and I went for it. Now, granted, every about 5 minutes, I was like checking my watch. I was like, whew, okay, I'm still okay. I'm still okay. But
Right.
it worked. And so I went through the class. The class was an hour. Um, and I think it did spike up, but it came back down. And like by the time I got to the end of the class, I was like right at about 80, 85. Um, and I was steady. And it was crazy. But yeah.
That is killer. No, I know the first time I heard you mention that, I was blown away. I still am, honestly. My claim to fame is I started at 90, went surfing, and came back at 89, and it updated to 90. And I was like, I did it, under 100. And here you are, like, I started at 75, and I finished at 80, like you're cured of diabetes or something.
I know, right?
Absolutely incredible. Now, I love that story because it was intentional. You had 54 carbs. It wasn't like I had a sandwich. And you're like, oh, I had this many and I expected this. I stayed level. And, it's not going to be perfect every time like that, but that
Right.
was impressive. And the fact that you're not even finished with the program yet, like you're already that level of mastery. And I just wanted to really draw some attention to that. First of all, say I'm proud of you for being bold because that takes some guts to jump into it like that, but also really taking the lessons and running with it. Um, Super cool. So you've got
Yeah.
that under your belt now. I know that you mentioned A1C is coming down. You had a win today. What's your time in range this last week? You had a day where it was a little higher.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it was the day after. I really believe it was like it was it was either the day before or the day after. And I'm almost positive it was the day after this work because the workout was on Tuesday. Um, and yeah, so this week I reached time and range one day of One said, I'll take the 94% because one of them said 94, the other one said 95, and I'll take the 95. I like the higher number.
I love it. 95% time and range. That's just fantastic. Uh, and I mean, I'm kind of looking back at your whole journey here. Obviously, you've got a lot of different pieces that we're implementing, and it's exciting from my perspective to see you excelling so quickly and impressively. Initially, though, I'm curious, what made you take a chance on working with us? You know, some stranger on the internet talking about diabetes.
You know, I mean, I'm a very religious guy, and one of my prayers is like, God, I have got to figure this out. I mean, unless you decide to miraculously heal me from diabetes, which you're very capable of doing, and if you do it,
Right.
I will receive it, and I'll tell everybody that needs to know. But until then, until we get to that place, it's like I got to figure this out. I've seen the worst of diabetes, and in my family on both sides, I've seen people, lose all the worst. I've seen it, and I was like, I don't want that for me or for my family. It's like I got to figure this out. And then it's starting to just was disturbing me that my previous endo allowed me to go. So I mean, I was seeing her for like 6, 7 years, and she was okay with my A1C being over 7. And like, that just wasn't good enough for me. And I'm kind of, now that I look back on it, I'm like, I'm a little upset that she allowed me to go that long
Yeah.
with it being that elevated. Um, so I, how, I think Facebook is listening to us all the time, and Facebook must have heard me talking about something about diabetes or Dexcom or something. And it started to jump up on my feed. And I was like, it just looked interesting to me. I was like, let me check this out. And when I started listening to the YouTube or whatever I saw on Facebook, I was like, I said immediately, I think my mom is a retired nurse, and I was like, I think this is it.
Mm.
Like, I just kind of had that sense, like, there is something that I'm gonna get from this that is like that missing piece for me that I've been looking for. I just kind of had that sense, and I did the first one. I was like, yeah, and I started listening, and it's just like it just made a lot of sense. And so I think I initially signed up for, I don't know, they had some special of, I don't know, can't remember what it was, but um was initially that it was like a week, like kind of crash course or whatever.
Oh,
And
sure.
then I think I got on with one of your counselors or whatever, and here I am. And I think it's one of the probably, I think we have to be willing to invest in ourselves. Our lives are just that important. Our lives are just that valuable to not only us, but to the people that depend upon us and that love us and that are around us. And I think, you know, part of me at first was just like, oh, but then I was just like, no, I got me investing in myself is me caring for and loving and fighting for my kids.
Mm.
Because the healthier that I am, the better that I'm going to be for them. And so that's kind of like my reason why. And so when I saw this program and it was like speaking to all the things that I've always wanted to understand, and now I was like, this is it. And so that's kind of why I took a chance. And I think I made a good decision.
Wow. I love that. That's motivational. I'm getting pumped up listening to it. I'm like, yeah, I need to take care of myself for my kids. I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Well, and yeah, I mean, obviously, like we talked about earlier, you're still working your way through it. Like we're not done yet. We're gonna keep pushing. But how are you feeling now? Like metrics aside, I know that the numbers look good, but how does life feel with more certainty? What's that look like for you?
It has taken away a level of stress and frustration. Like I feel like I've lived the last 17 years of my life frustrated, um, and somewhat stressed about diabetes because it's like, once again, from the very beginning, my endo said, Mr. Simpson, you're one of those people that just don't have a lot of changes as a type two, because most type twos you can say change your diet. You can
Mhm.
say lose some weight. You can say exercise. Well, I've always exercised. I ate a fairly healthy diet. There's changes that I could make, things that I changed and moved around. I've always exercised. I've never been terribly overweight. And so then she came back, it's like, well, you're one of those people that really don't have many changes that they can make. And so I saw diabetes progress very quickly for me. Like I went from oral meds, within a 10-year period of time, I went from oral meds to being insulin dependent to now being, not making any insulin. Like it progressed very quickly. And so, yeah, that was one of the things. It was like I gotta do something different.
Right.
Yeah.
So now having that certainty, is that opening up, I don't know, flexibility with plans? I know you mentioned like the low before boxing.
Yeah, I feel like that level of constant stress and frustration, like
Hmm.
here's a prime example. I feel like I am controlling diabetes, and diabetes is no longer controlling me or my life. And so I'm able to make decisions of things that I want to do, knowing that I have better control, And so I think that's the difference for me. It's just like I've lived too long with diabetes, just kind of controlling my life. And part of it's just me. It's like, okay, I don't know what to do, so I just kind of hands off and allow it just to kind of continue to wreak havoc. Versus saying, no, we're gonna wrestle this thing down, and we're gonna control it, and not allow it to control us.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's especially when diabetes has been controlling and we know what that feels like to have that lifted. That's killer. Uh, cool. Well, I want to make sure you respect your time. And this story has been incredible. But before we wrap up, any golden nuggets that you want to share with anybody else who might be on the outside looking in, peeking over the fence?
Um, I think one, invest in yourself. Kind of like I said earlier, I think the more we take care of ourselves, it's going to benefit those that we love and those that love us. Um, Number two is that it can be done. Like diabetes does not have to control your life. Um, and sometimes it seems like there's just no end. No, it gets better. And then those that are in the program just like stick with it. I was kind of frustrated in the beginning because it's like I couldn't get past the basal test and I couldn't get past the bolus. And here I am now.
Yeah.
It's like I'm past both of those, and I'm on to you know figuring out my correction factor and figuring out my IAR. And so it's like it is kind of like you said, those that first part is the most important part, but it takes a lot of time and it gets frustrating. It gets very frustrating because there was a point in time I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get past the bolus testing because it's like before I get to that test period, something's happening. I'm going high, I'm going low, or whatever. But it's like, so just stick with it. Um, and I think with anything, if you put in the time, you put in the work, you're gonna get the results.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned the effort that goes into it. It's like, yeah, this isn't some magical overnight fix, right? It's like, no, that was
not at all.
tough. You had to
Yeah.
put the work in, but now you're seeing why it was important to do that and experiencing those results. I think it's amazing. So I also want to take a moment to say I'm proud of you for putting that work in, for being dedicated, the kind of person that gets it done. And I'm so happy to see that you're beginning to see this whole thing unfold and how that's not the end product. Like we're still going to keep going, and I cannot wait to see what's next for you. So, yeah, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. Proud of you and appreciate you.
Yeah, man. And I thank you for um, you know, you testing all this out and coming up with this program and being able to make it available. Like I said, some of the stuff I was like, I wish I would have known this 7, 10, 15 years ago. But I'm glad that I'm getting it now. And so I appreciate you taking the time and seeing the need and meeting it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm pumped to share this stuff with you guys. And actually, for anybody who is watching right now and has no idea what we're talking about, and I'm gonna have to give him the shortcut, Craig. I know you went the long route and did the week challenge first, but if anybody's like, I need to know what this formula thing is, You can bypass the challenge, just go straight to a training that we have called, well, it's actually at diabetesinaction.com. Craig, did you happen to see that one, or did you come straight from the challenge?
Um, I did, but I saw it, but it's kind of like I didn't know. I was just like, okay, I just got to get started. So that was the first thing that I saw, and I get started. And I didn't even get very far in the week challenge before I actually got connected and into the program that I'm in now. So
Oh, right on.
yeah,
Well, glad that you're an action taker. Just get straight to the best stuff. That's always helpful. But
yeah.
yeah, for anybody else, that's a free training. You can go check out diabetesinaction.com. Again, Craig, thank you so much for your time today. I can't wait to see where we take this in the future. I think I have a baby behind me who learned how to open up doors.
That's awesome.
So yeah, appreciate you, Craig. Thanks for sharing that. And everybody else, go check out that training. You can join Craig inside. So Craig, have a great rest of your day. And everybody else, keep up the fight.
All right, thanks, Matt.